Today our topic is stress and well-being. Both these terms I know are familiar to you. Happiness is another word for well-being. From time immemorial in our country, our sages and seers have conceptualized that this goal of happiness for human beings is of different types. They call it sukha, they called it saukhya, they called it shanti, but then they also used different levels. If, for example, you had a very satisfying breakfast, today I had a very satisfying breakfast, and that well-being is called tripti, satisfaction and happiness that you derive from satisfaction of physical needs. Same way, harsha. Harsha is also a sense of happiness. When you are in a happy event, there is a laser program in this town. It's a fantastic event. A person who goes there, I saw it recently and I really felt happy. It is the glory of this city, its history, its present. It was an experience of happiness and well-being which can be termed as harsha. Or you're sitting across a lake and watching the lovely visual that is in front of you. This kind of a experience is called ullasa. And have a very meaningful conversation with a friend, a relative, or an acquaintance, and enjoy their company, fellowship. You move into an arena called santosha. Then we move further high into times of bliss. You can't explain it. It's ananda, where even if you are having little difficulty, you are so happy, you are elevated into a higher plane of happiness, where you suddenly feel yourself at one with the nature, with the universe, or some good thing that has happened. You have helped a poor starving person to have some food, have a blanket to cover. It gives you something which is more than what I have said before. And eventually our own philosophy says you move into even higher levels of happiness, pervasive bliss, which is called shanti. So there are all these levels. People are trying to gain these in their day-to-day life. Now, a thing called stress comes in the way. Stress is anything that a person experiences when they are under a time of change, a sense of pressure, a situation of conflict. When these things happen, we feel certain amount of stress. When we come to the university for the first time, the first few days may be stressful, trying to figure out all the procedures and how things work. Same way, when that stress continues to increase, what happens is, to a point, stress actually makes us to do and function better. If we are a bit anxious, we'll be working hard on our exams. And you kindly look at the board. I have a picture here. This talks about arousal of stress, 0 to 100, and here functioning of the person, 0 to 100. You will notice that when the arousal is going on, stress is increasing, deadlines are coming, the performance is actually going up, the functioning is going up. But to a point, up to here, it goes up, then gets into a plateau. Now if you put more effort here, hoping that the performance will go up, what actually will happen is fatigue will set in. We begin to get tired, leading to exhaustion if that continues. And if further continues without being ameliorated, without being neutralized, without being taken care of, without being addressed, illness can also set in. Today you find in the call centers, people are keeping awake at night, trying to get some sleep during the day, but they are getting progressively tired. And some of them are getting exhausted. Some of them are getting sick. And if something is not done for anybody, whether it's call centers or industrial workers or students or anybody who is doing anything, if this goes on and on, breakdown can occur. Now this is an area where well-being is not there. This is an area where there is well-being. How can we understand stress and how can we enhance well-being? In order to look at this, we take a fundamental premise, that is, stress is experienced in the totality of a human being, meaning stress is a holistic reaction of the person to any change, any pressure, or any conflict. When we say holistic, what we mean is this is experienced in the body, whatever is happening there or inside, and in the mind, and in our social relations, and in your philosophical reflections. Bio-psycho-social spiritual well-being is the meaning of health by the World Health Organization. Now I want to ask you a question. Can you show your hands how many of you had some recent experience of stress? Now can you mention what that stress was, what is it that caused stress, and secondly, how did you experience it in bodily? Let's start with that. Yes, please.
Recently, in one interview, I was asked to talk on a topic.
Right.
In front of so many people. Then I felt very stressed.
Right.
And though I know the topic,
sure,
I am unable to speak.
Yes. This is a good example. You are facing an audience, asked to give a talk. You knew the topic, but yet you were feeling stress in that situation. And you felt that in certain way in your body. Right? So what happened?
No, suddenly the mind became blank.
Mind became blank. Then the tongue became?
Unable to get the words.
Get the words. Dryness of the mouth. Like me, you would have wanted some water.
Yeah.
Right? So this is a good example of bodily reaction. Now can anyone else mention a stress you had and how did you experience it in your mind, meaning in your emotions, in your thoughts?
I was feeling stressed because I couldn't decide my topic for thesis.
Right.
So that was a stressful situation.
Stressful. Not being able to decide a topic for your thesis was a time of stress for you.
Yeah.
And you experienced it as in what form of emotions?
I used to feel restless.
Restless.
And I didn't get sleep.
You didn't get sleep. What feelings did you have?
I just used to think, keep on thinking.
Keep on thinking,
yeah,
racing,
yeah,
in your mind. And you felt certain amount of anxiety?
Yeah.
Worry?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Would anyone else kindly mention about how you experienced it socially, in terms of how did you feel like going to some people and taking comfort in their fellowship, or did you feel like withdrawing from people in that time?
Recently my friend's father had a kidney transplant operation.
Right.
I went to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
Then I felt very nervous.
Yes.
I was shaking.
Right.
I felt as if my body was getting dissected like that.
You are giving a very good example of how it was emotionally and physically. So socially, what happened? Did you just withdraw and stay back?
I came out of the operation theatre.
So you withdrew. Socially, you couldn't stand being there and being connected, but you felt like coming away. It was too much to take, right?
Yes.
It's quite understandable. A serious situation you are facing.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
And you are so close to this friend that you took the pain onto yourself as if
yes, sir,
you are going through it. Any of you have an experience where you felt stressful and then asked certain philosophical existential questions to yourself? Why should this have happened to me, or what is written? Things like that. Anyone wants to say?
When I was married, there was differences between my father and my husband.
Yes. Yes.
So that was taken to a lot of stress. I could not decide whether I should take his side. Like both were important to me.
Yes.
So that's the reason why I was in total stress. I could not another support one or not stand by. So I was
Right.
totally sandwiched between both of them.
Yes, yes. It must have been a very tough situation for
Yes.
you. So now, in terms of your own existential philosophical reflection, what did you think or say to yourself?
I felt, okay, at least I left it to God. I said, I cannot
Yes.
take to the situation. It's
Right.
better, let Him decide what is good for me.
Right.
And I prayed and I just relaxed, that's it.
Okay. So, you see, here you felt this was such a difficult situation, it was beyond your control. So finally you almost surrendered it to the supreme being that you believe in,
Yes.
and said, look, this is just beyond me. I am related to both, I am sandwiched between the both, I helpless. And then you were able to deal with it that way. All the four of you who have shared have explained in a very nice way how all human beings experience times of stress. Stress is good to a certain point. It helps us to act. It mobilizes us. But stress after a point becomes debilitating. It becomes dysfunctional. It begins to even affect health. Stress used to be talked about so much in the Western countries, and there were people who used to think this is a Western problem, it has nothing to do with our country. But you know, our country has been changing at a rapid pace. And I'll just mention to you a study done on 5,000 executives by Escott Heart Institute in New Delhi showed that inability to cope with stressful situations was a major problem for these executives. National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in Bangalore have found that 75% of the patients who had cardiac arrest were under more stress than normal people. Other studies have indicated there have been deaths among executives around 40 years of age, sudden heart attack and collapse due to chronic stress. So stress appears to be significantly associated with health also. The reason this happens is stress has an effect on the limbic system of the nervous system of human beings, and this limbic system affects the pituitary gland, which can act to produce certain cells that would adversely affect the immune system. All of us have immunity. Continuous stress, which is not mitigated, can lead to lowering of immunity, vulnerability for illnesses. At Ohio State University in the United States, where I finished my own studies in psychology, they have a lab where they found out by making artificial wounds on the body, then they covered them. They did that with those who had stress at a higher level and those who did not have stress at higher level. They made this. Now you may wonder, now how did they know that these people had stress or not? It can be found out in a number of ways. First, by talking to them. Secondly, by psychological tests. Thirdly, even through blood tests we can see whether the stress hormones have already entered the bloodstream. Cortisol. By identifying those who are under moderate stress and those who are under high stress, they made these wounds. Then they studied these wounds every day by taking fluid from there to see how they were healing. Because the most wonderful thing about the human body is that healing forces come to the point where there is a wound very rapidly. What they found was those who are under modest stress, those fluids reached that spot within 24 hours and healing started. But those who are under heavier stress due to immune system weakness, it took 2-3 days before the same fluids reached that point. Then every day they took photographs. They found very clearly by just looking, those who had modest stress or those who have neutralized their stress through certain measures, the healing was happening rapidly. Within 6-7 days, all these wounds were healed. Whereas for those who are under marital stress, exam stress, work stress, financial stress, other stresses, you could see very clearly the wounds were healing slowly. So what took 6 days for those who are under moderate stress or resolved stress, those who had chronic stress which was not taken care of, it was found that it was taking 12 days or more. That human beings are bio, psycho, social, spiritual beings. Every component has reciprocal influence on each other. And for the healing of the body, for example, today we live in a world where contagious diseases are rapidly diminishing or diminished. Is it not? We don't hear about, huge situations of malaria or smallpox or chicken pox as it used to be 20-30 years ago. But what is happening today is we have more chronic illnesses, such as diabetes is taking the top list. But what do you do in diabetes? In diabetes, you find that diet, exercise, and management of stress are 3 components, among others. So managing stress has become a part of the normal health of people. So counseling and other measures that reduce stress are becoming what they call behavioral medicine. So having established then that people seek well-being, excessive and chronic stress is an impediment for achieving those levels of well-being through which we can lead a quality of life, contribute well to the society. While these are connected, the good news is that in this 21st century, scientific knowledge has given us 2 things. 1, awareness of these realities and interconnectedness. 2, hope that these can be handled. How can they be handled? First, we talked about what are the components which are affected by stress and interfere with well-being. Now, how can this stress be neutralized, minimized, so that we can enjoy life? What has been found is there are basically holistic measures to deal with it. Just like stress is a holistic experience of body, mind, social and spiritual dimensions, the remedies also lie in body, mind, social and spiritual realms. Let us take bodily intervention. Can any one of you give an example of how you took some bodily measure, such as exercise or food or something, medicine, that helped to reduce your stress? Yes, please.
Whenever I feel stress, I go for a walking.
Beautiful.
And after coming, I will feel relaxed.
Relaxed.
Whenever I feel stress, I do meditation.
Please, you said you talk to God.
I tell him everything that I go through every day, and he gives me hope
and strength to face
Yeah.
those difficulties.
I talk to my friends and I tell them about my problem, what I'm going through, or I talk to
Yes.
my parents.
Yes, parents or friends,
Yeah.
and that brings you relief.
Yeah.
I don't sit lonely. I will go to my friends.
You
I will
reach
discuss
out to
something.
friends. See, now you have given very beautiful answers to how we can mitigate the ill effects of serious and chronic continuous stress. That will lead to well-being. So let us, quickly then summarize some of the possibilities. Physically, exercise is good. Diet, watching what you eat, what you don't eat, is very important, right? Similarly, having a medical checkup regularly will help to detect any conditions that need to be quickly attended to, because early detection and treatment is much better than neglect. Now, mentally, it is very important to admit, acknowledge what we are going through rather than deny and repress. It is good to say, yes, I am sad, I am unhappy, I am depressed, I am anxious, I am concerned, I am this and that. By that honest admission itself, there will be some relief. But secondly, by looking at those issues in a positive manner, is my glass so much empty or so much full? So much full. You see, that will make a huge difference to how we approach life. What we feel, what we think, how we act, that's the psychological. And to act not impulsively is far better. To act after thinking about the consequences. See, some people who are under great stress may say, oh, life is not worth living, I'll swallow something and kill myself. Large numbers of young people are doing that in our country. 75% of suicides are committed by younger people. So therefore, to wait, to process, to find alternate solutions can lead to well-being. Socially, our family systems, our community systems can be source of great support. That those who have social support become resilient. They have shock absorbers. Finally, having an attitude, a philosophical attitude to life, where one is able to acknowledge some power beyond oneself through whom one can get additional support. It's not a substitute for what we do. Even God will not help somebody who doesn't do anything to take steps. But when we do our part and surrender to the destiny and to whatever will be other forces that work on us, then people who have that type of an attitude are seen to be able to reduce stress. And when a person who has crossed that path does these things physically, emotionally, socially and existentially, philosophically, it is found that their condition begins to come back to here, to optimum functioning. It has been found that women with breast cancer who joined a support group where they talked with each other, shared their burdens and problems, they were able to maintain better health and live much longer. It has been found that depressed persons, for example, who take a combination of medication and psychotherapy from a specialist counselor, it is found 60 to 70% of the people are recovering. It is also found that even severe mental illnesses that are caused partly by more stress than they can take, besides other physical and environmental factors, that up to 70% of the people are able to be rehabilitated to live fairly normal lives within certain limitations. So we are now having more awareness of these issues as well as more hope that this can be handled, which can lead to better quality of life, well-being, sukha, saukya, in whatever categories. And that is the goal of education, that is the goal of all professions, and that is the need of all people in a fast changing, rapidly developing world. When I talked to some people in Bangalore recently, what is the biggest stress for you recently? They said, coming to the office, that is managing the traffic, is the first biggest stress, second to the other complications. And the importance of realizing in a world today where there is television, internet, cell phone, all these things, you find suddenly people go home in the evening and they are all glued to their televisions and not looking at each other. There is a diminishing of closeness, but it can be actively cultivated. Meditation, yoga, these practices can have very positive effects. I'll conclude by saying a study done with the Dalai Lama group of devotees, monks who practice the Buddhist meditation in Dharmasala. For the first time, Harvard University scientists went there and studied, and what they found was those monks are able to so wonderfully dilute stress through meditation. And what was found was that their body temperature in few minutes as they started meditating rose 15 degrees, generating heat. They are meditating at 4-degree temperature, and a cloth dipped in ice water was placed around them. In a few moments it dried up by the heat of the body. And they say, of course, from the Buddhist philosophical point, they talk about it as burning of all the evil in the heart, they will say. But what was happening was temperature was actually rising. And even when some of those were incarcerated as prisoners of war, they did not experience as much damage as some other people in other parts of the world. There was resiliency. So there is risk with untreated stress to well-being. There is resiliency whereby people's quality of life can increase. Catch hold of this stress, make good use of it, neutralize what is excess, and enjoy their life and experience well-being, not only in the conditions they are, but in all ages and stages of life. Thank you very much.